Well, I certainly think, I hope that the Middle East will play out to be a more democratic place for people. And I think the fact that these revolutions started taking place in every country who's been living in oppression for so long has been inspired by all these, the successful revolutions, has probably planted a seed of hope within all the people, that there will be change, and there's no going back anymore. This Libya, Qaddafi might take a few more weeks to fall, but he will eventually fall, and so will the Yemen. People have lost and sacrificed too much to go back and live the old days. So there's a lot of hope, and you see and you feel it within the people.
What will happen in Egypt? Are you afraid of a new dictator emerging?
Which dictator?
No.
Or any dictator, of course. But I feel like the Egyptian people have proved a point that they're not. When Egyptians were being interviewed about what if there's a new dictator that comes, they said if there is a new dictator, we can overthrow him. We have the power and the capacity to stand up against our government. We will not be silenced anymore, and this fear factor has been completely eliminated from our mindset, and that is something that Egyptians have never felt before. And they say the new government will have to think a million times before they try to harm our country once more, because they know what the Egyptian people are capable of. We tore down a dictator who's been ruling for 30 years in 18 days. So it's been an incredible, huge step forward. And even the army's trying to give people the power again. They don't want to be ruling anymore. They want to withdraw from the limelight and let people take on their course.
Do you think the next government, will they be able to create, or how long will it take to create like an efficient government that is open, and will you have free media, stuff like this?
Well, the Ministry of Media has been cancelled in Egypt. Egypt is the only country in the world that had a Ministry of Media, which is ridiculous. No, that just shouldn't be. So they cancelled that. So yes, free media will definitely be incorporated in society, in news, in opinions, all of that. There will be no censorship. And in fact, I find it hypocritical, but we have a newspaper called Al Ahram, and Al Ahram was a state newspaper, and before the fall of Mubarak, they praised him and made him seem like the best president on earth, etc., etc. The minute he fell, they cursed the living hell out of him. They were very, very critical of him. A lot of people have criticized the editor-in-chief of that newspaper because they said he's not being consistent, he's being a hypocrite. You shouldn't, even if it's state media, you don't go from one side of the spectrum to the other and completely discard this man. But it comes to show that they said that he had no principle, which I understand and I agree with, but this freedom to speak, and it's not only in news, but the fact that you can talk about politics in the street, and that's the most common topic in all discussions among all society, among all different age groups, is a pretty amazing thing.
Can you describe, you were in Egypt when Mubarak stepped down. Can you describe how it felt like for you, personally?
Well, it was a moment. Okay, I was in the car when he stepped down. I was in the car. We went the day before. We all thought he was going to step down. We were in Tahrir, and he didn't step down, and people got so furious and so angry, and people took off their shoes, and everybody was like, tomorrow we're going to march to the palace, tomorrow we're going to march to the palace. And everybody was fuming. It was it was extremely, people were enraged. And we went back home, and people barely got any sleep. Friday morning came, and we all took to the streets. Tahrir Square was full of people. It was millions of people. People also went to the palace. People went to the news station. People were just everywhere. We want Mubarak to fall. And I spent the morning there, and then people kind of just, went back and forth, and then I got hungry, so I called up a friend. I'm like, can we just go grab a bite, and then we'll come back to Tahrir? And he said, yeah, sure. So it was around probably 5 o'clock, and we got into a car, and he's like, what do you want to eat? I'm like, fatir, which is it's an Egyptian pastry. And we went to the restaurant, and people were kind of in front of the TV, and they didn't even recognize we walked into the store. We were the only customers, but we opened the door, and they kind of looked at us, and then they turned back to the TV, and we're like, are you open? And they're like, yeah, and they totally disregarded us. They kept looking, and we hear cheering on TV, and my friend Kareem is like, what happened? They're like, Mubarak stepped down. And we were like, what? And we got it was such a moment of disbelief that Kareem and I just looked at each other. We turned around, got out, went back to Tahrir Square. And it took a while to get back to Tahrir Square, because that moment, everybody, even those who wanted Mubarak, were so... It was just a moment it was surreal. It was a surreal moment that a dictator of 30 years is gone. And that next morning, and we were partying all night long, and the next morning, things were the same. Cars were still driving, people were walking, but the taste in the air that there's no dictator anymore was just such a sweet feeling. And we can now call him the former president. The former president, he's not our president anymore. We do not have a dictator anymore. So for all of us, it was just, and for me in particular, it was just, I've been longing for this moment my whole life, and it was just an incredible, it's an undescribable feeling. And even till today, it's still surreal. We don't have a dictator anymore.